And I'm like heartbroken, and I had so much attachment to this woman. But it was the first time in my life, since adult, I fall in love. And I'm heartbroken for like 6 months, but I learned so much about myself. I learned all these things that I was blocking out. I learned like my real vulnerability was never really touched on so much. And I started to like go deep into these blockages and change myself in a bigger way and become like truly comfortable around women, not just able to ride the vibes with women, but actually to be truly comfortable with women and to be myself and to not pretend in any way anymore and not to avoid any pain I felt, because I felt that pain now finally and I started to process it. So in a way, that was a gift, a huge gift for me, the heartbreak experience that I had.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like I've spoken about that. I've had that a lot before. More like before my kind of journey, where it was like those heartbreaks. And it was also similar to like my spirituality journey when that started. It was like I would always like break up with a girl, and then like I wouldn't break up with her, she would break up with me because I was so like into her and kind of pushed her away. And like I remember the first time, or like one of the significant times that happened in my late teenagers, I can't remember, early 20s. Like I remember I'd just suppress it, you know. So like we'd be going out with friends and I was partying and stuff. And I remember that night I'd just get like hammered drunk, like, oh, I don't want to feel these feelings of loneliness or feeling like I've just been rejected or feeling that I've been abandoned. So like I suppress it with alcohol. Then like I don't know, a year later,
Mm.
6 months, 2 years later, meet another girl, exact same situation happens. At that time, now I'm not drinking anymore. I've said, okay, I'm focusing on my health. I don't drink, but I smoke weed, you know? So after that breakup
Yeah.
happens, the first thought in my head is like, let's smoke a fat joint, you know, like to just get me out of here. I just want to run away. Exact same procedure. Third time this happened, 6 months, a year later, different girl. And at that time, I wasn't smoking weed, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing anything, being very healthy. And I remember the first thought that came into my head when this happens, like, I just want to eat like a fat, greasy burger with French fries and all this type of stuff. And that was the first time in my life where I caught that little voice in my head, that little, like, I need to suppress this thing. And I say, hey, I recognize you now, whether it was alcohol or smoking weed or bad food, it's the same mechanism. And that was the first time in my life I ever felt that heartbreak. Now, I don't know if it was to the extent that you done this, because this was still like before my journey. But I remember I just went and closed myself in my room that weekend and I said, I'm not running away from this feeling. I'm not running away from that sick feeling in my stomach that makes me like just want to fucking die, you know? And I actually sat there and I
Mm.
felt that and I would speak to it and I'd say, I'm here for you now. Like I used to run away from you, but you're allowed to be inside of me now. And like that was a huge shift for me, like not just in my dating game, but also just like with myself. And I felt like I went to a new level when I stopped running away from those feelings and actually just kind of sat with them. So I'm sure I've still pretty good, got a lot of work to do, but it sounded like you had a more extreme, intense version of that. I'm kind of curious what came up for you because obviously this is post your dating journey. So I don't know if there's still a little bit of an ego and like I'm good with girls and what would people think of me if they saw me now? Or were you at that stage where it was like, I don't care about any of this stuff. Like this experience is a gift, this heartbreak, this girl I fell in love with. And you were just able to do the work on that, or would that like naughty little ego voice still kind of rear its head? How was that process for you?
Yeah, like luckily because of my strong celibacy, like that ego was dead. That ego was
Mm.
nearly dead. Like about being good with women, I didn't care anymore. I allowed myself to be very bad with women if that was what I needed. I even made a post about it actually, the whole thing, and put it on my Facebook, which got a lot of I got a lot of love, and a lot of people liked me for the vulnerability. Um, yeah, I felt stupid because I fall in love with a girl so quick, of course, when she's not feeling the same, and I know she was not feeling the same. I remember like the moment where I told her that I loved her, I knew that she didn't, and I knew that she won't love me back, but I felt I had to get it off my chest because I hadn't felt like that since I was like, let's say, 15, from that original experience that I expressed. I'd shut myself down. So luckily, I was able to be fully vulnerable, but that made it very hard because all of that shit that I experienced with women, it was coming up, like all the pain that I had in my teenage years that motivated me to be so extreme in the dating community. It all came up, and like I was not functioning so well for quite some time. I had a very good friend beside me who was probably part of the reason why I experienced it so strong, because my friend was into dating. He was a dating coach at some point as well, but he was more spiritual and very focused on the heart. He was very heart open. So like being around him, my heart was very open, probably the most it's ever been. And letting a girl in like that and just getting crushed completely. I tried to allow myself to be as crushed as possible because I was so aware of this inner work. It was still a struggle. I would say like it took me 6 months to get over the first 80%. And then she kind of messaged me again when I was not in the continent, so I got back into it a little bit. But then I realized now it's not a good idea. So then it took maybe 6 more months to finish it. But yeah, like I didn't have so much at that point. I didn't care so much about the community because I saw how toxic it was to try to live up to a certain image and try to be
Mm,
cool. I saw how toxic it was. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that thing about the heart journey. One of my mentors at the moment, a guy named Umrapani, he's badass, and he almost like relates man woman relating to like the chakra system, so like at the root level,
Mm,
like that's more about like how do you serve each other. Like a man needs to be able to be a protector, you need to have access to the monster, so to speak, but not necessarily use it, and women find that like very attractive, and then at the second center, that's more of your sex center, can you thrill a woman in her sex? And then like third center, that's more like ego, where it's like, hey, does she look up to you, does she respect you? And obviously each of these levels can have their own traps, and these are all kind of like the animalistic lower levels, the base three. And then he talks about the time you have the biggest shift is when you actually move from those bottom three and you go into the fourth, which is obviously the heart. And he says that heart journeys are the most excruciating thing you ever do, because what they basically are is humiliation. It's you feeling something towards someone and you writing them fucking love poems, and you'll stand outside their house and sing to them and do all these things where you know that this might is probably not going to be reciprocated. Like this ends in you being crushed, and having the courage to actually go and do that is a spiritual journey and a spiritual quest. And I can honestly say, like, I actually haven't like really experienced that hard journey, but when he spoke about that, I was like, wow, that sounds so scary and vulnerable, and just like he says that's one of the best ways to fry up your ego is go on a hard journey, on a hard adventure, and it can be for men or women. But what you just described, it's almost like you had that experience where someone at a lower level might say, oh, what a loser. Look how he had one artist for this girl and he just got destroyed. But from like a deeper soul spiritual level, it's like you were able to unlock and deal with certain things that you wouldn't have been able to deal with had you not gone on that heart journey. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
yeah, for sure. Like that's how I would explain it to some extent as well. Like just I was so deep in surrender. I knew this was my moment to experience something that I hadn't allowed myself to experience for over 13 years.